Welcome to Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville. Join 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer Mike Miller.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another edition of Mike's on Mike. Nice to have you with us today. Of course, our broadcast is brought to you by the Jacksonville Historical Society. Alan Bliss, who we hope will get over here someday to be able to watch us tape the show. We've been trying to get him here for a couple of weeks now, but he's a very busy man. Anyhow, thanks to him and his staff, as well as the donors who have made this show possible. Very, very grateful for all of the support that we're getting from them and from you, because we're getting great feedback on the show. Not always. Some people take exception to what we're saying or to a guest that we might have on, but that's what this is all about. It's an open forum, and we want to hear from those who are watching or listening to the program on a weekly basis. We're here, of course. Mike Tolbert is out of the barn. He's here with us in studio, and we're not making him shovel anything while he's here, unlike what he was at home. And
Trust me, he'll still shovel.
And the snickering you're hearing, of course, is Mike Hightower, who is safely up in the Carolinas, taking care of business up there for us, but he will be back with us next week, and I think all three of us will be in studio next week.
That's right.
It'll be nice. Be good to have you with us. It's been quite a week. We don't have a guest here today because we had so much we wanted to talk about on so many different areas that we thought the best thing would be for the three of us just to go ahead and jawbone it out and get our thoughts across, our perceptions and insights and observations on the news of the day and the news of this past week. It's just been horrendous. Quite obviously, the most important story, I think, that we've all been following ever since last Saturday is the war that's broken out in Israel against Hamas. It's been horrendous on both sides. Innocent lives have been taken, which is very, very unfortunate, but of course unavoidable. And I'm sure anybody who's got a military background and who has ever had to fight in combat will tell you that it's inevitable. You can't really do much about that. But we're into it now, and it's going to stay strong. The amount of support that we have seen here in Northeast Florida has been very interesting, to say the least. I drove over to the town center this past Saturday where Palestinians, a pro-Palestinian march was being held. I wanted to see what that mood was like, and it was very peaceful. It was very organized, and it went very, very well. I attended three different pro-Israeli observations last week. One was at the synagogue that I belong to, which also was wonderful. And it's good that people are involved in this, as they should be, because it's very important, and this is not a skirmish that's far away. This affects everybody, not just here, but across the world.
As a Jew, Mike, how has it affected you?
It's affected me in that I'm fearful that the amount of anti-Semitism, which we have seen steadily grow in the last 5-8 years, is going to accelerate as people begin to take sides to this. I think I sent you a copy of a note that I had sent to Senator Marco Rubio via his brother Mario, who's a very good friend. And my point to him was, besides thanking him for his support of Israel, but my main point was, what can we do in order to educate this population of ours and around the world that this is not a war against Palestinians, it's not a war against Jordanians, it's not a war against Egyptians, Lebanese, or Syrians. This is a war against a terrorist organization called Hamas. The only governing factor of Hamas is that the people back in 2006 in the Gaza Strip voted them as the administrating government. The problem is, and I said 2006, we are now, 17 years later than that? And they have never allowed another election since then. So that tells you something. And were they democratically elected? You could probably say yes. Have they democratically been able to stay in office? I don't see how you can say yes. None of you haven't done a follow-up election since that time. That's my fear.
Let me ask you something else. The city council very quickly passed a resolution condemning Hamas and supporting Israel.
Yes.
It passed with all but one vote. The one vote
Yes.
against it was the council president, Ron Salem. How did that make you feel?
Disappointed. Obviously, I've known President Salem for many years. I knew him when I was working in government back in the early 2000s. I contributed to his first campaign because I felt that much for him. And I felt very badly that he felt that he had to take this stand. Back in the days when I was a liaison to city council, it wasn't unheard of for me to ask a city councilman, why don't you go out and grab a cup of coffee during this next vote? Because I would rather you be not here
Yeah.
than vote against something that my boss, the mayor, wanted. And he could have done that very easily.
Could have done that.
He could have abstained.
Yes.
He could have walked into the green room. He could have done anything but put a vote on the record.
Well, I was disappointed too, but I was also outraged. I mean, to
Well-
me, there's no excuse for that. It may, I had 2 or 3 immediate thoughts. I know Ron is not sanctioning the beheading of babies and the burning
Or
of
the rape
people.
of women,
Yeah, and the rape of women.
or the
But it-
burning of families.
But that's what that vote said. And I wonder if Ron had have been a juror at the Charlie Manson trial, how he would have decided. You know? And in 2001, after 9/11, the city council passed a resolution supporting the United States and obviously condemning those who had done the atrocity.
Right.
People in Israel felt like this was their 9/11. And for somebody sitting in Jacksonville's leadership to say no, it's unbelievable to me.
To underscore that, when supposedly a couple days after his no vote, the backlash, I understand, was pretty overwhelming. He used the words, because of his heritage. Mike Miller just explained this is not about being a Jordanian, not being about Palestinian. This is about terrorism. This is about a group of people who are barbarians, who have no soul, whose prime charter in life, whose only commitment in life is for the extinction of all the Jewish population. This is about Holocaust 201. This was about being against the brutality of children, babies, rape of women, families being burned or destroyed. This was about a vote against terrorism. It was not a vote against a group of people about heritage. These people have no heritage. These are barbarians. This was a vote about evil people. And it just, the difference between that and what the president staff at the University of Florida came out and just said, he said, this is, Hamas is evil and there's no defense for terrorism. There's not any gray area here. Either you support terrorism or you're against it. Period, paragraph.
Let's move on to another subject.
Sure.
We picked that one up.
For now.
You know,
Well, unfortunately, I think we're going to be back talking about this because I
I
think
do
it's
too, Mike.
because as Mike Miller said, this is going to be drawn out and we're unfortunately, because of communications today, we're going to be seeing this 24/7. But we need to remember who started this and how it started and who did it. That's what we need to remember.
Totally agree. Totally agree. You know, going in a different kind of a direction. I remember our conversation this week when I said to you guys that State Attorney Melissa Nelson is about to run for a third term. She's going to run again for a third term. And the response was almost, who the hell is Melissa Nelson? Because she's almost unknown, having already served almost 2 terms as state attorney. And the conversation that I'd like to have is around that. To amplify that, University of North Florida recently did a poll about Melissa Nelson. And it said her job approval is a net positive, with 31% approving and only 13% disapproving. That is good. But the big deal is 56% either didn't know or refused to answer the question, which amplifies the fact that Melissa who? What's going on here? And what bothers me is, we grew up, Mike, you and I especially grew up with Ed
Yeah.
Austin as state attorney and Harry Shorstein as state attorney. Ed Austin indicted his buddy, Hans Tansler, when he thought he was out of line or something was wrong. He called a grand jury on another buddy of his, Jake Godbole. Jake didn't get indicted, but I mean, Harry Shorstein was the same sort of guy. A state attorney is supposed to be a watchdog. It helps keep those people on that city council and in that mayor's office aware that somebody's watching them.
Can I add to that, by the way?
Yeah.
Because there's another force that needs to realize that there's a watchdog, and that's the sheriff's department.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything that we've talked about and we've read about regarding the medical care of inmates and what happened with Armor Company, which is now taken by NAFCare, which I still think, by the way, should go to UF Shams, folks. I'm sorry, but I still think they should take over the welfare of our inmates. But the point is that where was the investigation of that? Why was a grand jury not called to look into the way that procurement was done?
I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that Sheriff Waters' wife works at the state attorney's office in the investigations department.
Check, please.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something that's close to my heart. Let's go back to JEA. I mean, this thing, as soon as the JEA part came out, thanks to the Times Union, particularly Nate Monroe and all that, when it came and it was presented to the state attorney, what did she do? She punted to the feds. And with all due respect to the feds, it takes them years to ever just pull any information together. I
don't know that she fumbled. I don't know that she punted. I think she fumbled.
Well, what she did was she took it off her plate and threw it over there.
Or took a knee.
Yeah, but the issue is, you think about Ed Austin, you think about Shorstein, there is no way in God's green earth that those two men would have said, they would have looked at that, and if they had found something, they would have brought the feds in. But it was here, and it was her responsibility as the state attorney to do something.
Why not? Okay, here comes now the perception and the insight. Why has she been so reluctant to bring about grand juries? Is she afraid of what the outcome would be?
I think Mike Talbert put it there. If you don't, it's a little bit like a tortoise. If you don't put your head out, nobody knows, you don't get in trouble, and nobody knows who you are. So when it comes up for re-election time, and there's nothing that you were controversial,
well, it's also,
then you get reelected.
Well, can you find a candidate to run against?
However, but let me tell you, the perception is that that's an abdication of leadership.
Well, and
the
also
state
I think
attorney,
part of it, Mike, I think part of it, in my mind, is she is a bedfellow, not a watchdog with the powers that be. She was, no question that she was a Curry person. She didn't get anywhere near the JEA. The same people who ran Curry and who supported Curry ran her and supported her. Now, she's not with them anymore, I understand. But it's just a lack of pure leadership, and nobody does anything about it. And it's gotten even worse when you watch city council members now vote pet projects for their own members, themselves, nonprofits, thousands and thousands of dollars, not following city policy, not following procedure, and it's not even a hiccup. It just happens.
No.
I mean, I don't get it.
No, and yet you have all the nonprofits that have to be competitive. They have to go through a process. But what happens is the city council members who have these nonprofits, their own finance, they recuse themselves, but of course their colleagues vote for it.
Yes, sir.
So there's two tiers of justice, folks. There's two tiers going on, and to me that I think is an obvious thing that the state attorney should look into. I can tell you, Harry Shorstein or Ed Austin wouldn't have allowed that to happen.
I don't think Angela Corey even would have done that.
I don't think so either.
No. Now the question, is there a D out there that wants that position that would be willing to run against the incumbent?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. It's just
That
No,
speaks
it-
volumes too,
it's
doesn't
the
it?
kind of world we live in.
Well, it goes back to the observations and perceptions. Then we want to know if when the UNF poll comes out and says, are you cynical of government? I'll lay odds. The odds, those percentages are going to be in the 70s and 80s. And these are the reasons why people are cynical and why we cannot get qualified, good people to run for office.
Yeah, if you get a qualified person, Democrat or Republican or independent, to run for state attorney, they're going to get boiled in oil, just like Donna Deegan did, just like Letitia Burton did, just like Scott
Absolutely.
Wilson did. Who wants to go through that?
By the way, and this is telling a little bit behind the scenes for the audience, but the day we're taping this is Tuesday now, and it's about 2:15 in the afternoon. And as we speak, Congress is trying to find somebody to become the Speaker of the House of Representatives. You talk about dysfunction in government. I mean, and that's not a partisan issue one way or the other. But the point is that, I mean, the amount of disorganization and lack of respect too for the government body, Mike Hightower, as you were talking about, this just adds more to that scenario.
For 2 weeks, we have not had a government that can function. We got war going on in Ukraine. We have genocides going on in the Middle East, and we have Congress that doesn't have a leader.
And cannot vote for one penny of support until a Speaker of the House is in place. So,
I will tell you, if there is none of the above on the ballot come November, we should not be shocked.
it's true.
You think that will ever happen? I've always heard about that, but I've never seen it.
Let's move our attention over to something a little more positive. Florida-Georgia game is coming up in the next couple of weeks, guys.
Actually, it's coming up in the next few days.
Oh, that's right. It's
Yeah.
wow. What is the date?
Like the upcoming
Holy
weekend.
moly.
When this is shown, it will be the 23rd of the month.
All right, well, let's take this from the top here, folks. Welcome once again to another episode.
Obviously, Mr. Miller didn't have an invitation to a tailgate party. He would have,
There's
Or a skybox. Nor do I expect one.
there's an awful lot at stake other than this Georgia's record. About the Florida-Georgia game. In May, the Curry administration got a 2-year extension of the contract that goes through the end, I think, of 2025.
Correct.
My understanding is the Jaguars want to have a contract in place and start stadium construction about the same time in 2025, which means the games will be moved, including Georgia-Florida. Florida-Georgia will be moved to at least for a year and maybe 2 years. That's happened once before when the original stadium was built for the football team.
right.
And I don't know, it doesn't look good. This comes up all the time. I remember when I was working for Mayor Godbole, and we had a contract come up, and the students at that time were very, very disappointed in coming to Jacksonville because there wasn't anything for them to do. And it was more the students and the people who tailgate down at the football stadium and their motorhomes and stuff. And so to help change the topic, we created something called the world's largest fraternity party and had all the students come. Well, that's not an option. The deal is bigger now. And Coach Smart of Georgia has made it very, very clear that he wants to take that game on a home-and-home basis, which is what will happen once the stadium's in those 2 years. I think the game will be played on a home-and-home basis.
You're right.
Just like it was the last time. And I fear that that's going to rupture the whole deal. Both coaches, but both schools, think they have a much better opportunity to recruit players, the players they want on their home campus for one of their biggest games and not in Jacksonville, Florida. I think Mayor Deegan's got a lot on her plate.
Oh, no question.
The stadium negotiation, what's going to go on there is incredible. But if Georgia, Florida floats out the door, that's going to be a big, big blow, I think. I'd love to know what you guys think.
Mr. Hightower.
Well, What really worries me, Mike, that's different than the last time, is that since it's going to be 2 years, each school is going to be able to host that big game. And we all know that loyalty will be at the campus. And when both, whether it be alumni or the donors, but particularly the students, when they can bring that game to their home stadium, it's going to be very difficult. And I think the negotiations to get it back, if we can get it back, is going to cost us dearly. And candidly, the negotiations for it to come back they will have the upper hand in negotiations, because I think that the spirit and the loyalty to having those two games for 2 years, each one being able to host it at in their own stadium, it's going to be tough to get them back.
Well, my understanding is they're not going to start negotiating a new contract until after the stadium negotiations are done, which was no telling when that could be. Everybody seems to want to put that on the fast track, but I don't know that anybody, maybe other than Nick Saban at Alabama, has more power at their university than Kirby Smart does at University of Georgia.
Right now.
And if he's putting the press on to get that game played every year, every other year on that campus, it doesn't look good to me.
There was an interesting guest editorial that was in the paper over the weekend. In fact, you brought this to my attention, Mike Tolbert, by Chris Corr, who's an assistant professor in the School of Hospitality, Sport, and Tourism Management at Troy State University, which just happens to be in Alabama, so maybe that's why he's feeling the way he does. But he was born in Jacksonville and raised here, too, and he was a graduate of the University of Florida. But he was talking about, and this goes back to whether or not we could get the Florida-Georgia game back. It said the economic impact for the city of Jacksonville is stated to be significant. It's about $30+ million annually that game generates here in Jacksonville. While hotels are occupied and restaurants are full in Duval County, and please don't try to get a reservation for dinner that weekend if you happen to be here in town, and that's during the fourth Saturday in October. The point is that those restaurants and those hotels in both Gainesville and Athens are empty.
Yeah,
there's nobody there. So in those 2 years you're talking about, if they do go back to their respective home cities of Gainesville and Athens, and all of a sudden the business community realizes just what kind of an economic impact it has been for their city to have it there, even every other year if they should go to that point, that could start a drive to really bring about some change. Now, I'd be interested to hear what President Sass says about that, and hear what he has to say about whether or not he would fight to try to keep the Florida-Georgia game in Gainesville. That would be an interesting fight. But I think we're going to get back. I can't see how this city would let that go because, again, $30 million is how much economic impact we're getting, and we only pay the teams somewhere between $2 and $3 million apiece.
But that's going to go up significantly.
It's going to, absolutely.
That's going to go up significantly.
Well, because the price of gas, you have to drive them in, on bus and
Well, I think as Mike Tolbert said, I mean, this is coming during a time when Mayor Deegan is trying to get her sea legs, and this is just going to add to the challenge that she's got going on.
No question about it.
You want to talk about resilience?
Let's talk about resilience. Let's see if we can keep it up.
The Deegan administration recently rolled out the 2-year report they've been doing on resiliency. The resiliency officer and the mayor did it, as I understand, and it's long awaited, and there's no question it's critical information and it's critical guidance. This is nitpicky, but they rolled it out in front of students at the University of North Florida. And I know a little bit about rollouts. I've done a few in my life. And
one or two.
The purpose of a rollout is to get significant attention and get people around a subject, around an issue, who want to be a part of it. And I question taking something that's so important. It's been 2 years, and I sound like I'm only doing this groaning and moaning today, but 2 years to do and roll it out in front of 150 college students instead of getting the Chamber of Commerce, getting the Civic Council, getting all the environmental groups that have got to put their arms around this to make this happen, getting them in a room and getting them to embrace this effort. I just don't understand that. That's my editorial for today.
All right, that's your insight, perception.
Well, Mike, it's well, and the observation is that is something that I mean, let's all. I don't want to get into climate control, but we have seen where the river is rising, and we're talking about things being built on the river. And every time we have a flood, whether it's in San Marco or in Avondale or any place in town where we have low land, this issue comes up. And with all due respect, 150 students at the University of North Florida are not going to move the needle to make tough decisions or do a financial analysis or to bring all the people together to say, what are we going to do about it? Your point is well taken, Mike. This is where you build a coalition. This is where you get, and then you have a strategy, put it in place. And with all due respect, 150 students is not how you roll it out, and it's not where the strategy comes from.
It's got to be
for
a
a community. Not for a community that sits on the river.
Why would like the Civic Council not be a good vehicle for something like this? You're
Well, I
talking
would
about
think
some
it
of
would
the
be. And the
largest
Chamber of
leaders.
Commerce.
Exactly.
They're going to have to buy in,
Yes, they are.
Exactly.
and I would get them in on the ground floor, not afterwards.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that we don't have another hurricane or something that's going to cause this, because everyone's got a lot on their plate. But flooding comes unfortunately too easy in Jacksonville.
Yes, it does. By the way, I don't know if you happen to see this particular story today, but apparently we are now looking at the possibility of allowing open alcohol drinking on the Riverwalk once we get the Riverwalk taken care of. But the interesting part about that, because right now nobody is allowed to take alcohol out on the Riverwalk, walking on the river, for obvious reasons. We don't have any walls to keep people from falling in, I think. But they said that the way to control it, because they're not going to allow any outside liquor to come in, is that everyone will have to drink out of a Riverwalk cup, plastic cup.
That's policing.
So
who's going to be the vet? Who's going to be in charge of selling the cups?
Well, isn't that an interesting question? I don't know. I ought to call up Michael Corrigan and say, this is a Visit Jacksonville thing, buddy. If you want to make some money to help out your budget next year, you want to get Visit Jacksonville and put that logo on those cups. But I thought it was kind of interesting because, with so many things, we don't always think them completely through before we come up with an idea. And who would stop a person who's got a small bottle in their pocket from pouring it into one of the legitimate legal cups and walking down the hallway by drinking it that way?
You have to immediately throw your cup in the trash once you brought a drink outside from one of the restaurants or something.
Or even worse, of course, throwing it in the river, which is what we're trying to clean up in the first place.
Yep.
But I'd love to see the Riverwalk become really a central focus of our downtown. I think that would help in that discussion that we had before with Lori Boyer about having an entertainment zone down near the stadium versus one in the central business district.
Well, this might have been before you arrived in town, but when the South Bank Riverwalk was built under Mayor Godbole, he understood and knew that if you just built it and walked away from it and just left it there for people to kind of find, it wasn't going to happen. And so he put a lady named Pat Craig in charge of the programming that Riverwalk, and there was something going on there all the damn time. And she's the one who ended up creating and producing the Christmas boat parade.
Oh,
Boat parade was part of. I mean, it was just, but there was something all the time, and that's what's got to happen. Maybe if you gave people free cups and a free drink, they'd come down. But I don't think that's going to happen.
My main complaint is always that they have the boat parade on the Friday after Thanksgiving, and I'm still down in South Florida with my family.
That's too bad.
Yeah, because I miss it every single year, and it's a shame. I like it.
We'll take videos for you.
Please
Mike.
do. Yeah, please do.
Okay.
I was speaking to someone from the administration yesterday to find out what's next You got all these things going on, and what is coming up? What can we look forward to seeing and talking about here on the show? And as I understand it, the transition committees are all coming out with their reports
good.
here very shortly. And I already asked for copies of all of them for us to take a look at to see if it's something that we want to expand upon.
Hightower's going to need a lot of photos.
He is.
And big print and single syllable words.
They're coming out in the Reader's Digest portion for you, so you'll be okay with that.
Oh, let's go back to the resiliency thing.
Sure.
The part of the story about the resiliency is that they didn't print the report. It's online, but they didn't. It's 150 pages, but they didn't want to print the report because they didn't want to waste paper.
Wow.
You're making this up.
I'm not making it. If I can find it with all my stuff here.
What?
Did they at least have a
send it to
link
it.
for you to be able to look at it online? I would hope so.
I guess so. I'm not making it up. I swear I'm not.
Don't print it out, though, because there's a shortage of ink.
Well,
I'm going to read. I'm
What
going to
is-
read this to you. I mean, I look at that and I'm going, wait a minute.
We're very well organized, folks. We
The
really are.
100
We got everything all lined up exactly how we're supposed to talk about it.
The 148-page strategy report, posted online but not printed to avoid wasting paper, details 45 actions and twice that many more narrowly limited sub-actions, whatever a sub-action is. I don't know what that is.
Well, the forestry department was happy about that.
Yeah, I guess.
I can guess so, too. All right, guys, we're coming to near the end of our show, believe it or not. This thing has just flown by. What else you got? Anything for a lightning round here, Mr. Hightower?
no, I'm just thinking something that important. They don't even have it. You go online. Can't you see going to the Chamber of Commerce or going to the Civic Council and the new executive director saying, gentlemen, ladies of the Civic Council, if you want to know about the resilience report, here's the link to go to it. And by the way, we want you to help fund or support what it says.
But please don't print it out on your own printer.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
2 years we've spent doing this, which I thought was important.
Yeah.
And we hired someone. And how much money? And we don't just. All right.
I think we bitched and moaned enough today.
I'll wait for you. I'll do a lightning round. I'm still.
Well, keep your fingers crossed because as we mentioned briefly earlier, the stadium deal is starting to move. We understand that Mike Weinstein and the firm that they hired out of Chicago to negotiate this deal is now in place, and the talks are going to begin. So to talk about that next week, we're going to have Nate Monroe from the Times Union here with us in our studio.
Oh, great.
And hopefully Gene Furnette. Gene, if you're watching
You're
this
watching
thing,
this, Gene.
come on, please answer Tolbert's calls, because if not you, we got to go to our lockup and we don't have one. So
No, then the backup is we've got Tolbert to be back in the barn, pitching whatever he does. We don't want that.
but it'll be a good
Please,
discussion.
Gene, call us back.
This will be the first, I'm sure, of a number of programs that we're going to be doing on the stadium deal as this thing moves through its process. So we certainly hope that you'll be in tune for that next week. Once again, you can find us on just about any platform in the world, it seems. Look at iPodcast. We're on YouTube. We have our own website, of course, at MikeSoundMike.com. We're on Facebook as well, and a bunch of other platforms. So please look for us and watch it more than once. That helps us, believe it or not, for some odd reason. And once again, our thanks to the Historical Society for sponsoring us and making this program possible for you people to see it and for us to enjoy doing it. And with that, guys, thank you very much. Have a good week.
Y'all take care. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Take
See y'all
care,
next
everybody.
week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and Mike Miller can be found at your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook and YouTube. Learn more at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversations with Mike's on Mike.